Hey everyone, welcome. So in this video I wanted to show you my new build, which is primarily oriented at dealing elemental damage, and in this build I use two main archetypes, which are Invoker and Ritualist. But first of all, a disclaimer: if you do not own the DLC for this game, then you will not be able to use these archetypes, because both of them are actually tied to first and second new DLCs that you have to manually separately purchase, and then you will be able to get these. So before going into making this build and watching the video, just make sure that you have a DLC purchased or not. So yeah, just something to keep in mind. And before actually showing you the build itself, I'm going to leave you with a demonstration. I'm going to kill some bosses with it. Also, I'm going to show you a short video of me defeating and killing some elite mobs as well on Root Earth, close to the end of the game, and you can see for yourself how the build manages itself against some of the most intense and strong encounters you can have in the game. So watch the demo if you like the build, stick with me and I will explain to you how to get it and assemble it. Enjoy the gameplay. that you have watched the demonstration, if you liked the build, I'm going to explain to you how to make it. So just like I said in the beginning, the first archetype is the Invoker. This archetype basically gives us this skill that we will use entire time. I mean, of course you can change it if you want, but I recommend sticking with the Way of Kayula, because this is just a nuke skill. It's basically like an ultimate of ultimate skills, just very strong. So basically what the skill does, I'm just going to demonstrate quickly what it does. So basically it's an AoE skill, and when you use it, it starts smashing the enemies with lightning, as you can see. And this actually has a very big radius. I'm going to explain about that a bit later. So very strong thing. So we are going to be making a elemental damage build, and this will help a lot as well. So it's going to continuously hit our enemies with lightning, which is very cool. And it's actually a cheat skill, because if you add AoE extension to it, like basically there is this skill I'm going to explain to you. So there is this skill amplitude. So what it does, it increases the AoE size and aura range. So this will basically make sure that our skill range is extended. So for example, if by default, for example, me standing here, this skill would reach, like, say for example, that dummy at the end and no more, or maybe like this dummy, for example, right? And if I extend my aura size, it will go way above and beyond that dummy over there, and it's going to extend way further. So that's a very handy thing, and it basically kills your enemies even if they are standing behind walls and stuff, behind obstacles. So yeah, very nice skill. And everything else, well, if you want to understand how the archetype works, you're going to have to get into some details. So I'm just going to briefly show you what are the perks of this archetype. So skill damage 30%, and elemental damage 15%, and critical chance for skill and elemental damage types as well. Then we have skill cooldowns reduced by 1%, and also heals us for max health. Then we have movement speed 5% and damage reduction 5% as well. And lastly, on relic use, extend the duration of active invoker skills by 20%. So basically, if we use the Way of Kayula, and for example, if it expires halfway, we use our relic, right? And we extend the active time of our skill by 20%, which is very handy. Now, the second archetype, Ritualist, the most important part of this build in my opinion. This archetype itself is primarily focused on dealing elemental damage. So we are using this skill, which is Miasma. It's going to deal a lot of dots on our enemies and deal a ton of damage. So as you can see, this skill is very OP. It deals 4 types of dot damages at the same time, which is bleeding, burning, overloaded, and corroded. So overloaded, if you don't know, is basically a shock, like electricity skill applied to your enemies. I do recommend sticking with Miasma, but you can also use the Death Wish, which is also insane. If you want, this will add quite a bit of survivability to your build. So as you can see, negates all healing to self. As I understand, you will not be able to heal yourself with the heart, which is the main healing item, and instead it will just give you a crazy leech and also lots of healing effects and also lots of healing effectiveness, so you will be able to very easily sustain yourself in the fight. It just has a kind of a long cooldown, 66 seconds. So as you can see, it increases all damage as well by a whopping 50%. That's a lot for this game. It's actually quite rare that you see such a big damage bonus in this game, because mostly all the bonuses for damage in this game are kind of underwhelming. So seeing a 50% damage boost is, wow, just very good. And also, just like I said, for your survivability, 10% base damage dealt as lifesteal. So basically, when you're dealing damage onto your enemies, your health will be regenerating on its own, which is very good for this game because you just literally die from 1 or 2 hits. This helps a lot. Skills, we have first one, so all damage increased to enemies that are affected by negative status effect, which is basically elemental damage, which is either of these, on our miasma skill, so you deal elemental damage and you increase your damage by 20%, which is a lot. Then we have Terrified. This basically gives us more chance to drop additional ammo when our enemies are dying. Then we have Dark Blood. This one is just a defensive skill which reduces the negative status effects damage by 25% and also blight buildup by 50. And the last one is Purge. When you use your Relic, you will cleanse all the negative status effects if you have any on your character. Cool thing to have. Then again, we have a Visionary, and then again we have Gifted as our archetype trait, which will give us skill duration extended by 30%, and Affliction on the Ritualist side, which is also a archetype trait, which will give us duration of our status effects by 100%, which is a lot. Now, getting to the armor is basically irrelevant in this game in my opinion, just like in Dark Souls and Souls games. So it's kind of a placebo. You might think if you increase your armor it will give you anything. Maybe I haven't done enough testing, but in my understanding it doesn't really give anything. So if I press my detailed stats, as you can see I have total damage reduction by 40 to almost 43%, and it doesn't really matter because I am still dying from 2 or 3 hits, maybe sometimes even 1 or 2 hits, which is insane, especially bosses. Yeah, it's not really effective in this game, to be honest, so you can go with the armor of choice. I'm just rocking mostly a Zealot set, and I just added this dandy topper hat, which is also acquired from the new DLC as well, and just added some body armor that has a lot of armor to kind of make myself more tanky. Then for the Relic we have a Profane Heart, which gives us a innate 3% lifesteal bonus. This basically means that we have a all-time leech applied onto us all the time, and when you attack enemies you just basically eat off health, restore health as well. Very cool. And on this build it's not going to be mostly about damage reduction, but more like a leech skill. So when we deal damage and elemental damage, we will restore our health as well. And I also have these bonuses inserted: skill duration, more duration, and skill cooldown. You can have others if you want. You can also change this build a bit if you want to make it more suitable to your own playstyle. You don't necessarily have to copy everything I have. And now, lastly, weapon: Sparkfire Shotgun with Heatwave. It's also a preference, you can change it to anything you want. Fetid Wounds, which gives us a critical hit chance on this weapon depending on how many negative effects a enemy has. So as we are going to be dealing a lot of negative effects with miasma and other skills, we're going to be dealing a lot of elemental damage, and thus we will be able to increase our critical hit chance on the Sparkfire, which is a main gun, by quite a bit, 15% increase. And as you can see on level 10, Fetid Wounds gives us ranged weak spot and ranged critical hits, corroded, negative effect. So basically this weapon will apply 2 negative effects at the same time, which is fire and corrosion. That's amazing. Then I have a Krell as my melee. If you do not have this weapon, it's not going to break your build by any means. It's just that this Krell melee is just super good. I highly recommend getting this one. So basically if you copy my Krell, okay, so the melee weapon which you can actually throw will deal 2 elemental damages at the same time. As you can see, 2 numbers, 70 and something else, 70 and 200 something. So this will deal shock and corroded at the same time from a melee weapon. It's not even a main weapon, right? So you can just throw your bloody axe at someone and increase the status effect on the enemy, and at the same time deal a lot of damage, including everything else we have in this package. So really handy. Alright, so now to the accessories, right? So the first one we have is a Sinister Totem, which is in my opinion, a must-have for this build. But the thing is, this one's not going to be that easy to get, so you might want to farm for it, and trust me, it's going to be worth your time. So just go ahead and farm for this one. It's just amazing. So what this one does is, reading the description, so when we are applying the negative status effect, or refreshing it, basically doing another one and another one, it's going to increase our status effect damage by 1% for 15 seconds, and it has a whopping 50 stacks. So at the maximum amount of stacks we will have a whopping 50% increased damage for our elemental damage. That's amazing. For this build, that's exactly what we want. Just want to have this one, trust me. Then for overall damage we have a Burden of the Destroyer, which increases the range of all firearms. Basically our weapons will be able to shoot to a higher distance, but it's not really required in this build because both our Sparkfire shotgun and Nebula, which I will get to in a bit, are kind of close range. So as you can see, let's take this dummy for example. So you can see shotguns are not really effective at long range, and with Nebula I can't even get my damage all the way there. As you can see, it's not getting there, so it doesn't really matter. So you can change this one if you want, but I'm just keeping it for now. And it also increases all damage dealt by 15%. So Black Spinel, so this one is going to be your choice. So you can either have this ring, which is a red ring of death. This ring is amazing for this build, and I would say it's kind of mandatory, but I'm not using it. Why? So firstly I will explain what it does. So this ring duplicates our status effects. So if you deal one shock, it will deal it twice and deal more damage. So basically every single status effect that you're dealing on the enemy will be duplicated, and also it reduces the status effect damage as well by 10%. This ring, if you want more damage, but if you want more survivability, I recommend using the Black Spinel or something of a sort. Yeah, you can just add survivability ring if you want to here, or you can just keep this red ring, and you will have more damage out of this build. You will deal more elemental damage. Then Burden of the Stylist. I would say very good pick for this build. Not necessarily mandatory, but because I'm using my weapon mods a lot, which is Heat Wave, and on Nebula I'm using a Nano Swarm, which is amazing. It deals a ton of damage. I would say that this ring is very good because it increases our mod and also skill damage. Miasma will deal more damage as well. And then lastly, Band of the Fanatic increases status effect damage by 25 and duration reduced by 65% on yourself. So 25% status damage. This one's mandatory, you have to get this one. So that's basically it. Also Nebula, Nano Swarm, absolutely amazing skill, and also feedback plus 10 generates 20% of single charge value as passive mod power over 10 seconds. So this one just increases our generation of mod power. Okay, so at the end I'm just going to show you how this build works, what to start with. So if you're fighting a boss, you're using this skill first because it has kind of a long animation, so you use that. Then you use Miasma, but you have to kind of stay closer to the enemy. Make sure that you're at least 30 meters away from the enemy with this one. Basically, it's going to be like this. So, you can also pop your weapon mods first if you want. So, weapon mod, skill 1, skill 2, and deal damage. You can also add the Parallax, and you're dealing a ton of damage. So that's how to play this build. And also before some strong encounter, use this Relic if you're having the Refined Heart. Just use before the fight and you will have more reach as well. And now lastly, onto the traits before I end the video. So, Affliction, Gifted, all to the maximum. I also use Regrowth for health regen. Now Dodge Weight, that is for using heavier armor and not to fat roll. So you're going to be evading faster. Then Vigor for health, Endurance for stamina, more generation, 20% increase. Also Spirit, Expertise for skill cooldowns, Amplitude, mandatory skill, absolutely have to have it, increases our AoE size. Bark Skin for total damage reduction, to be more tanky. And I use Siphoner for lifesteal efficacy, basically gives us more health regen when we are dealing damage. And that's the build, guys. If you like the build, please subscribe to the channel, like the video, leave a comment, and thanks for watching. See you around.